Hello everyone, I am running wild. This is the first part of my Madden 26 jersey tutorial. This is going to cover the basics as well as get into the actual system that has changed for Madden 26 from what some folks might be familiar with. So to start off with, I'm just going to cover some of the basics in terms of terminology, tools, and whatnot, so that it will be easier to follow, as well as if you are a little unsure about what has happened later, you can check back and see, what I was specifically referencing. So first and foremost, you are going to need tools. You're going to need the Madden modding community tools, the editor, and the mod manager. The editor is what you're actually going to be utilizing to create the mods, and then the mod manager will be used later to install them and to play with other mods. You're also going to need some editing tools. This is stuff like Photoshop or GIMP. I use Photopea. It's just the one I'm the most used to, and I would recommend just use whatever you're comfortable with, have the most experience with, is the most intuitive. Otherwise, that's about it. On the editing tools, some helpful extras will be Blender. This way you can see how your 2D texture images will look on a 3D model. I have specific files and like little workshop files so that I can see how everything, is looking, make sure everything's not stretching, and we'll go over that a little bit. Materialize is another helpful extra that you can utilize to make normal maps and a few other things. I don't always use it, but I have in the past, and it's very useful. All right, so what are we attempting to do? Well, you're attempting to make changes to texture files and how they map onto meshes and whatnot, and how they've done it in the past is that you'd have your mesh, which is your 3D object, you'd have your image texture, or in this case it'll be 3 different files, we'll go over that, and that the texture file would wrap over the mesh like a coat of paint on a wall, and you would have your final output. And the way that it worked in Madden 24, Madden 25, and so on before, is that you would have individual sets of textures for each jersey. So, for instance, if you just took the home and away jersey textures for every NFL team, so that's 32 teams, that is effectively that you need 64 jerseys, and the textures break down into 3 different files, so that's 192 files. That's a lot of storage, that's a lot of data. So the Madden 26 team, they change it into this compiler software, so it works differently, but some of what I'm going to cover in here is still very relevant and will be stuff that you're still going to end up using at the end of the day to get the final product that you're looking for. So the 3 files that we're covering, this is your color file, the normal file, and the RSM. Color file, that's the tint. That's basically the color of the actual image texture that's going to show up in-game. The normal file, that is what is used to create texture in the jersey, the actual fabric, word marks, patches, stuff like that. It's just basically creating a trick of the light on a 2D image to represent 3D, a 3D look, rather than having to, model everything in 3D, which would severely hamper computing capability and would be kind of a real mess. RSM, that is your reflectiveness, smoothness, metal mask, or metalness texture. That is specifically just to designate which areas of the jersey should be a little bit more matte or rough, like the texture of the fabric or whatnot. What should be kind of shiny or metallic or smooth, like the NFL logo on the collar there. That's really metallic and whatnot. So all 3 of these files effectively stack on top of each other and are what's going to be kind of the basis for not only modding in 26 but modding in 25 and 24. This way, hey, it just kind of covers some of the, just the very basics that you're going to work with. Jersey Forge, they have a YouTube channel, as well as their website where you can create some of these files. They are also really good at showing the basics of putting stuff together and how to get them in the game and whatnot. And we'll go over some of that later. But for now, these are the 3 files that have traditionally been used, and we're going to show how they are still used and how it's a little different. One last note is on file type. The standard file type that Madden uses for their image textures is a DDS file. And you can export, as DDS. You can export as PNG. You can export as stuff. I export as TGA files, and I re-import. When I'm working on stuff in Photopea, I use TGA files. That's just what I'm the most comfortable with. Most of the tutorials that have covered this stuff, especially like Jersey Forge, use DDS files. I don't mess with those. That's not something I'm very familiar with. I don't mess with it. You do not have to use TGA. You can use DDS. I would avoid PNG files as they tend to they can not look right in game. They have some issues with that. It doesn't necessarily play nice when you import them. So I would recommend either using a DDS or a TGA file, and TGA is just what I use. So I'll see you in the next part. All right, and we're moving on to part 2 of the modding tutorial. For what we're going to cover right now, it's mostly going to be about where you're going to find files, how things have changed, and a little bit later we'll get into a full breakdown of the new system, of what each part relates to, how they all work. So first and foremost, if you're looking to do jersey modding, the original way that this would have been done would have been, so here we have the editor, we have the editor open. You'd go to Content, Characters, Player, Parts, Uniforms, and in the old way, you'd go to NFL here, and then you have all of the teams, including some other ancillary stuff. So you'd click on the team, and then you'd go down to whichever jersey you're wanting to do. They're usually broken up by years. Some teams haven't had a lot of jersey changes. Some teams have brand new. So generally, the good rule of thumb would be to go to the newest section to look and find the assets that you would be working on. So if this was Madden 25 or 24, and I wanted to say, work on the 49ers jerseys, the newest jerseys they had would be, in 2023, in which case, right here, we have our color file, our col file, and you'd bring that up, and boom, this is last year what the jersey files would have looked like. There's your normal, there's your RSM. That's what you would have been looking at. And so if you were wanting to work on them, you'd bring them up, you'd go up here, you'd hit export. Like I said, I do them as TGAs, so I would export it as a TGA, and then you send it off to wherever your files are, and then you could work on it inside the photo editing software, and then you would come back into the editor, and then you'd hit import, and it would bring up whatever you're going to import, and you'd replace it. That's how it was done the last couple of Maddens. That's not necessarily how it is done now. The process of importing and exporting is still basically the same, but the way the system is actually set up is quite different because, hey, here's the red jersey, and then, here's your, white away jersey and your alternate jerseys. And sometimes they would be in different sections of this portion here, but for the most part, if you're wanting to do any editing of the jersey sets, this is where you'd find them. But now, things are a little different. Okay, so with the new system, here's where you're going to find things are a little different. So we're going to work with a jersey here. So rather than being here in the NFL section where we were just at, we're actually going to be up here at jersey, drop down to NFL, drop down to part items. This is in here in the Data Explorer is going to bring up every single jersey that is in the game for every team, as well as AFC jerseys for like the Pro Bowl and vanity jerseys, stuff like that. So right here, you are going to have to scroll down a little bit. You can use the search bar up here to make it a little easier to find if you type in the constituent name. but I'm just going to pull it down here. We're going to scroll down and down and down and down. It is alphabetically ordered. So since we're working the 49ers, we're going to Niner here. And I'm going to go down. So currently, we're going to go to 2023 red. We're going to just double click that. This is going to open it. We're also going to come over here, click on the reference tab.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
So, we're going to break down what each part of this means. So, to start off with, I'm going to direct you down here to the bottom right corner into the reference section. This reference section, so this has like the font, the saloon font. So this would be what's on the word mark just below the collar. It's also got the normal version, stuff like that. It's got all these bits and pieces. What this should be seen as is that this is the recipe for how the compiler is what the compiler is using in this specific jersey. So it's using this for the front nameplate. It's using, you've got the fabrics here. It's using these specific fabrics. It's using these colors and so on and so forth. Every piece that is going to be pulled in and used, up here is going to be down here. If it is not down here, it will not be in here. This is, so if you were to think, this is essentially your recipe list. This is every ingredient that goes into the final product. I will highlight this for a moment, but we're going to touch on it later. If we go over here, so this is the bundles tab, right here, this is the bundle file that is utilized specifically for this one. Each part, whether it's pants or jersey, helmet, whatever, has their own bundle. So if we were to think of the references tab here as our recipe, the bundle would be basically like your pantry. This is where all of your items need to be basically highlighted to the bundle editor that, hey, this is here, so that it can actually be called up by the recipe. And if they're not, then even if you were to say put it into the recipe, or put it up into here into the compositor, it wouldn't show up because even though the recipe's calling for it, you don't have it in the pantry. Not the best analogy, but we'll touch on the bundles further down the line. But for now, we're going to go through what this stuff means. Now we can just ignore this top portion here. We're first going to go to layer comp. So layer composition is probably what it is. So you bring this down and, oh my goodness, what am I looking at? Okay, it's okay, just take a second. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just hit the arrow here to go to CID mask layers. CID, as far as I can tell, just means color identification. So just about every jersey uses this. Mostly just going to be dealing with the home and away. Alternates can sometimes get a little funky, but this will cover what you need to cover. So right here, so you see this Nike jersey 2023 seams Vapor Fusion CID. So you can just hit, click those there, click open asset. Now what you are looking at right here with this file is a palletized file that assigns specific materials to specific points on the jersey, on the mesh. So if we were to, we'll go back to the tab here, click here where it says layer 4. Each of these colors here, so you've got red, green, blue, yellow, and cyan, those all correspond to a material ID, to a material number, which is what you will have right here. These are your materials. So for instance, so red, so that's material number 1. We drop down, it just says Vapor Untouchable Fabric. So red here covers the vast majority of the jersey. So the vast majority of the jerseys, if you bring it down, you can click on the texture file here. So again, here we have the the color file, the RSM, and the normal textures. These right here are what is going to be put on the normal file down for you to see. So We don't mess with the default mask because this is just, this is basically just saying, hey, there's no specific color to this specific jersey. That is actually handled in another section. But it does use this normal file here, the Vapor Untouchable fabric, which you can bring up. So it means that everywhere that is red, at least everywhere that's been assigned red, will have this fabric. So that would be everywhere here. And it will have this RSM file as well, this corresponding RSM file. Now, one of the things that EA did when they created this new compositor system is that, especially since most teams at this point have switched to the Vapor Fuse jersey pattern, some still haven't, but those are like the Packers. But most teams at this point are using the exact same fabric, the exact same sheen and everything. So what they effectively did was made it so that the Vapor Untouchable fabric, these layers are global basically. So every team that uses the Vapor Untouchable normal RSM files, if you were to put in a new file, that would change it for every team that uses it, which is pretty much every team in the game. So by doing this, they've effectively made it so that instead of having to create individual RSM and normal and color files, it's basically just one file, or in this case two, that works for every team that uses it. And like I said, that's almost every single team. So then the question comes down to, well, then how do you work with the color? Like how do they do that if every team is using essentially the same way to allocate for the texture and for the RSM? How do you adjust the color? Well, that is going to be down here in the tint. So in the same way that they're using this color ID system up here to assign which portions of the jersey will have which types of fabric and material, is the same way that they're attaching and assigning colors. Now, you only have 3 colors available, but in these materials, that's not really that big a deal because for the most part, this is the absolute base of the jersey. This is the very, very bottom of the jersey. So in this case with the 49ers, so they have gym red color right here. That means that everything that is red right here is going to be red. And for the sake of simplicity, basically because the 49ers jersey is red all the way through, everything will be red. So if we go to the next material, so this right here, this is our green material, which would be here in the center of the chest and the back here. So if we do that and we open up, so this is the vent holes. So if you open this again, now you'll see, oh, this has another set of specific files. So we'll just open this up. So it has its own color file, has its own normal file and RSM file, because in this section of the jersey, in the green section, it is actually a different fabric. It's got these, vent holes, and you'll see them in game. It has these vent holes. This way, again, it's global. So you don't have to make sure that every single jersey color normal file and all that, which would be, hundreds, don't all have to be the exact same. It simply takes this file and drops it in there, assigns it based on where the color ID file says to assign it. And that's, again, global for every team that uses the Vapor Untouchable fabric and the vent holes. That is global, again, with a few exceptions. So that is material number 2. And right there, that basically says, okay, so this section is a fabric. This section's got the vent holes. And it divvies it out, and each of the materials, again, corresponding up here to their number and the color, will, again, correspond to different parts of the jersey. And some, like most of the stuff that are using the Vapor Fuse style of jersey, are all using basically the same fabric. So you'll see Vapor Untouchable again, Vapor Untouchable. The only thing that might change, aside from the materials, so say we go down here to, let's see, so yellow is number 6 here. Yellow is the vent holes that are actually on the neck. So if we open up that normal file here, this right here is a different from here. This is only in the little cuts that they have right in the collar, right where the NFL logo is at. So that it only exists there. So with that being said, one other thing to consider is the material transform. So this basically transforms the scale of the material in terms of making it so that, like, oh, hey, this fabric, it's really small, it's got to have a very certain look to it. The best I can say on this one is it's basically like zooming in or zooming out on the actual material, making it more visible, less visible, all that. I would recommend to just leave this, especially for the materials and whatnot. Leave the transform range and material transform, just leave that alone. We can get into that in another tutorial of some of the stuff that can be changed and whatnot, but we're not going to mess with that too much. So going back to the tint, you see, oh, Jim Red. Because, again, the 49ers jersey in this situation is red top to bottom. You could, for instance, if you wanted to say, hey, I want the collar to be a different color, well, you can totally do that. So if you went in, so the collar here, so that's blue, cyan, and yellow. So if we go back up here, we can see, okay, so blue is material number 3, cyan is material number 4, and yellow is material number 6. So I'm just going to go ahead and close the tabs here I don't need. So we need 3, we need 5, or pardon me, 4, and we need 6. So if I were to go in and say, hey, I don't want this to be red, I want this to be white, I could say, oh, okay, we can do that. That's actually fairly simple. So one of the things, if you look here in the references for our jersey, so we'll go back here and bring it back up. If we go through, and you can either sort by type or you can sort by name, whatever. So if we go here, you'll see that there's a select number of colors that are already in the jersey. They're in the pantry, they're in the bundle, they're in the recipe, including Jim Red, Global White, Global Black, the standard pads, and the number white. Global Black and White are basically the same shade of black and white, and it's used across the entire NFL. Pretty much by default. So if you've got a team, they've got a white away jersey, they're going to be using the global white and global black and so on and so forth. So if, say, because these right here, these are already in the recipe, they're already in the pantry, since they're basically in for everyone. So if I went to global white, I could go find in Data Explorer right here. So we go over here to tint and just hit the arrow, boom. But hey, we need to also make sure, so that's for material 6, so that's for the little neck vent holes. We're going to do Jim Red. And then we're going to go back up here, we're going to go to tint again, global white. So this would now have the effect of changing that specific part of the jersey to white. So why don't we go ahead and I'll launch this thing and you can see how it changed in game. And you can see how that can be affected as we go forward. All right, and now we are in game, and we can see the results of the very simple minor change that we've made to the collar on the 49ers red jersey. It should be all white now. I will tell you right now, when you're making these changes in the compositor, the troubling part about it is that you will not see them until you're in game. Unlike when you were editing the color files and normal files, you can see the changes that you're making pretty clearly. So that is the biggest drawback, is not knowing exactly what has changed, but we'll get into that. So we'll bring up right quick here. So we're here in our thing. We're going to go to, you can take a look at the jerseys here. Sometimes it takes a second to come up. Sometimes you might need to change to another. But as you can see right here, we have now changed the collar to white rather than red. Again, that's a very simple change, and it's also just kind of a workaround because there's other ways to tackle changing elements on the jerseys, but we'll get into that. So as you can see, that was a very basic, simple change. And if we come back here so we're going to edit roster real quick. We'll bring up our boy George Kittle here, just so you can see a little closer to what the color ID system is doing. So if you see the fabric, right above the stitching, and you see, oh, there's the vent holes, there's the vapor untouchable fabric, the neck, those little slits in the neck there, they have their own as well. So again, that comes back to the color identification system, that red, green, and whatnot. So, and you can see how the jersey is broken down into these different sections that get these different materials, but the tint controls the overall baseline color. So if I say change the tint on the rest of the jersey to white, it would now be a white jersey rather than a red jersey, and so on and so forth. So say if you wanted to completely change, be like, hey, I want to have gold as a 49ers jersey, you could do that. But for now, we'll just stick with this very simple thing. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of game real quick, and we will get back to where we were at, and we can go forth with how we want to make some changes, as well as what the rest of the system is really looking like. So at this point, we have covered the CID and how it is broken down into pieces. We've covered materials, which is just the base of the jersey, the base normal files that are pulled and all stitched together, if you will. So we'll go ahead and close these, and next we're going to go over the overlays. Now, overlays, these go on top of the base jersey, and they have a numerical hierarchy. So overlay number 1 is under overlay number 2 and 3 and 4. So if, say, you were to put, say, one stripe on top of another stripe, or something that where things needed to overlay and maybe overlap a little bit, the higher they are in this hierarchy, basically the farther up they are on top of the fabric. So for instance, let's go ahead and we'll just open a couple of these things here. So this is the seams. This is essentially what creates the stitching effects that you will see. It creates the stitching effects along the jersey and kind of breaks it down into its constituent pieces. So that is the absolute base, because everything else is supposed to layer on top of that. So we'll go to overlay 2. This is actually the t-shirt and pads. So this is actually where you would make changes for, say, the undershirt, for the players that wear their shirts untucked. If you go to tint here, the first one, color red. So in this case, for 49ers, since it's red, it's gym red. So if you wanted that to be white instead, like, oh, they're wearing white undershirts, it will not only change the color of the undershirt right there at the shoulder pads, but it will change it underneath as well. Typically, you don't really need to touch this all that much. It's typically you're going to be same color as the base jersey. Now, if we go to overlay 3, NFL logo. So again, this is the logo that the NFL has, on its collar. This is the normal file, so it has its own special file. And so if I changed this right here, this would change it for every single team, because they all use this, same file. Now, they don't use a palletized version of their color file, and we'll get into that in another section when we're actually talking about changing and editing colors. As you can see here, they got the white and the blue and the red. This is not palletized in the same way that the jersey material selection and other overlays are palletized. And that's because for every jersey, they want it to be the exact same. They want the exact same look, the exact same color on the NFL logo, so that they all match. Versus jersey elements such as stitches or patches are typically going to be palletized like this, because they're going to be pulling from the colors and the recipes in the references here that are specific to that team and specific to that jersey. Overlay 4, and by the way, where these things line up, So typically the NFL logo is typically overlay 3, and the overlay 4 is typically the Nike logos. That is not necessarily the same for every single jersey. Sometimes they're higher up in the hierarchy, sometimes they're lower down. So really the key is you got to go and you got to look and see, oh, okay, so this is where the Nike logo is, this is where the NFL logo is, and so on and so forth, so that you don't change the wrong thing. So we'll go here now to overlay 5. So click on that. White stripe shoulder. Okay, so the 49ers, if we bring up the original style that we've been doing this in, so we'll go back up here, NFL 49ers 2023. So they have 3 white stripes on the shoulders, or arms, cuffs, however you want to say it. And so what EA has done now is, instead of having a file that has the color, it has everything, these are now their own separate smaller files that get composited in. So we have 1, 2, 3 white shoulder stripes. This right here, so and again, it goes from, typically it's usually from the bottom up, so this right here should be the lowest stripe, middle stripe, higher stripe. The only way to know for certain is to make some changes in the editor, but again, you won't know that until we're there. And so if we go here, so we see, oh, there's a white shoulder stripe. So if you go right here to texture, and we click open here to the color file, you'll see, oh, it's red, because again, this is palletized. That way, the color of the stripe is going to be determined by the compositor rather than being a global color like the NFL logo would be. Because the 49ers have a white stripe, you could have a team that has the exact same set of stripes, the exact same design, but they use silver stripes or they use blue stripes, whatever. The whole point of this is to create a system that can pull things together without them all having to be in one big, hey, 2K by 4K file that takes a long time to load, as well as, hey, you got to build all of these things, which is a pain in the butt. So that's what you're getting when you open up the cull file. And if you open up and you see like, oh, they don't have a normal file. Some of these, jersey stripes and stuff like that don't have a normal file. They're basically just, if you will, a little, stripe of paint right there on top of the jersey. So if we go back to tint, you can see, oh, these are white. So again, if I wanted to change it, I could change it to black, or I could change it to red, or I could change it to purple if I wanted to, but we'll just leave it as it is right now. What you also notice is now the RSM right here, since there is no RSM file in here, well, there is actually a drop-down section for the RSM that can allow you to change how reflective and how this actually looks in game. So, and you got your reflectance, your smoothness, and your metal mask. So if, say, I wanted to make these stripes really, this stripe like really, metallic. So we'll make it with this. It is basically going to look like it's really smooth and shiny, almost like a candy wrapper, really metallic. I can change it to where it'll look like that. So we'll go into game here in a second and go over how that works. We're going to go over one other thing before we do that, which is the overlay blend right in here. So this right here effectively communicates to the compositor how visible each portion of a certain overlay should be in the mesh or in the overall product. So you have your color, normal, RSM, and the occlusion. So with this is essentially saying, with a 1, the color of this stripe, which is a white stripe, should be completely opaque. You should be able to see that completely. The normal on it, it doesn't have a normal in this, but basically it's saying, hey, it should be mostly opaque, so you should, if it had its own, say it had a different kind of fabric, or maybe you went with something with some cool texturing, it would say, hey, this should be mostly visible, but you can see a little bit of the underlying fabric underneath. Same thing with the RSM, where, oh, hey, this is, this is 1. This should be showing the RSM as controlled up here. This should be showing it all the way, rather than, oh, it should basically be completely flat and not show up like that. And the occlusion is all about the alpha mask. We'll get into that a little bit later. Again, you see the overlay transform. This, again, not only is this showing like the scale of the stripe, but it's also showing like how far up or down on the shoulder it should be, it should be placed. Again, I would try to avoid messing with these guys here. It can get kind of funky. That being said, you can, right click and copy these transforms, whether they're tint or whatever. So if you're saying, hey, I just want to change the position so it matches this one stripe, say on a different jersey, you can usually pull the overlay transforms without much of an issue, and say like, oh, I want this, I want the stripe, instead of the stripe being here, I want it up here a little bit. Well, if you've got a jersey, whether it's already in with the 49ers or a different team, you can pull that overlay and drop it in to move it. And that is one way, but again, that you will not be able to see until it is actually in game, which is, that's a little frustrating. So what we're going to do here, just to show, so we've adjusted the RSM here, so everything should be really shiny and metallic and, like I said, look almost like a piece of tin foil or like a candy wrapper. To really drive this home, we'll go to the overlay blend for the other stripes, and we're just going to make these as 0, so 0 color and everything, which means that when we load up, we will not see the bottom stripe, and we should not see the top stripe. We should only see the middle stripe. So we'll go ahead and launch into the game, and just to see our results, see how everything has gone, and just that way you can see how some of these things have been adjusted. Come back into game here. All right, we are now taking a look at the change that we made in the game. So remember, we changed the RSM of the stripe so that it would be, really metallic, and it would look, really, really shiny and whatnot. And of course, you can make different changes. You can make stuff more matte or whatever. Just this one was the most striking. And as you can see, yeah, the stripe itself right there, it has almost a mirror-like quality because, we really turned up the smoothness and how reflective it is, and that it's supposed to look really metallic. You'll also note that instead of changing the middle stripe, we changed the top stripe. But we've also made the middle stripe and the bottom stripe, basically transparent, so they don't look like they exist on there. And again, that is because the compositor does not always have everything in the, in what you would think would be the most logical hierarchy. Because I would think, oh, the higher the stripe is, the higher it should be in the hierarchy. So again, if you make changes, what's best to do is start off small, do smaller changes, incremental changes. That way you can see, like, oh, it only made a very small change, rather than like, oh, I did all this work and now I got to go back and revert it and start over. But as you can see, once again, now with the changes we've made, we have a white color and we have a single metallic mirror-like stripe on the jersey. So that's just with the basic edits that we've done. So we'll go ahead and exit out of game. And now we are back to the editor, back to the compositor. So having done that now, with the overlays, if I wanted to, I could add another shoulder stripe if I wanted to, because I could just, copy and paste this, entire overlay. I could copy and paste it and put it in again. I can make changes to the transform range if I wanted to, like, oh, hey, we're gonna have 4 stripes, which means one of them I have to move down. We'll get into that a little bit more when we're talking about changing certain elements in jerseys. But for now, we're going to move away from the overlays, and we're going to move on to the other elements in the compositor so that we can show what they do and how it all comes together. So we're going to go to number compositor or number comp right here. So similarly, it'll have a mask CID, so similar to the CID that we had in the layer comp. So if we click on that, it'll just show red, green, and blue, because when you're getting the palletization of most items that are not, this guy up here, they're usually just red, green, and blue. So if we go to overlay 1, so this, at least for the numbers comp, if you go to textures, right here, this will show us what texture set is being used for the numbers. So let's go ahead and open this up. So what we have here is actually an array file. This is actually 10 separate, typically for these PNGs. PNGs are actually just fine for the numbers. They usually don't have any issues with that. So this is one of those things where you're going to want to check in with Jersey Forge if you're a little unsure about that. I will go into changing some of this stuff. But so right here, so we see standard Jersey, whatnot. This right here is what this specific Jersey is utilizing for its number array. And as you can see, it is red, not white, because the color of the number is being handled by the tint. So if I change this from global number white, I could change it to global black, the numbers would be black. What you will notice is now some jerseys have their own specific color and texture, but a lot of jerseys are using this, because they have, similar block numbers, similar block fonts, they get assigned to a lot of the same jerseys. So I'm just going to go ahead, we're going to find this in the Data Explorer, and I will break down what I mean. So you see standard jersey 1989ers number array. Well, if you look here, now we're in the References tab, but you also see this in the bundles. So if you look at the References tab, you can see that this number set, this 1989ers jersey number set, is also used with some of the older throwback Colts jerseys, older 49ers jerseys, practice jerseys. So again, if I was to change this, it would be changed for all of them, which you may or may not want to do. But this is effectively where you're going to find the initial numbers. There is a way to change and override those. We will get into that in another portion, another tutorial. But the biggest thing you need to know, at least for making changes to numbers at the most base function, would be, messing with them here in the same way you would with the layer comp and the overlays here as part of the number comp. If you come here to number material setting, this is also where you can choose whether or not you have a number on the top of the shoulder or a number on the sleeve. You just click it on or off. This is a little funky, especially if it's not working. If you try that, you will see you might get some weird results. We'll cover this in another tutorial specifically about numbers, where I'll go more into depth about that. But also as part of this number material setting, you'll have number selection. I don't mess with that. I don't really know what that does. You'll have the offset scale spacing. So this is for the chest, back, shoulders, sleeves, and whatnot. This adjusts the location where it is on the jersey. So effectively the X right there would be left or right here on the chest or the back, or and then the Y-axis changes it up and down towards the collar or towards the bottom hem. So those are right there. Since everything for the most part needs to be centered, that's where you're mostly just going to be changing the Y. And then the Z and W right here control the actual scaling of the numbers, whether they become smaller, bigger, wider, narrower. Again, these are values I would not mess with very much. I would try to leave them alone as much as possible. Number spacing right here. So this is a parameter that covers specifically the spacing between two numbers. So if you get into a double-digit number, this essentially says how much physical space is between the edge of one number and the other number. And the bigger the number, the smaller the space. The smaller the number, the wider the spacing. Some jerseys, like say the Bears, because they have a really thin, rounded font, if you say replace that with kind of a thicker block font, the numbers might overlap each other. So there is where you might make some adjustments for the number spacing so that they'll move away a little bit. And there's even the ability to do spacing overrides that will cover specific numbers and will cover hey, some numbers like 19 might need to be closer together than say 28, just because the number slices might be a little bit wider or narrower. We're not going to worry too much about that for now. Again, we're going to get onto that at a later time. One of the other things you're going to see in here, so this is this is what I was talking about, where the player number adjustment list. So this is again where, hey, the spacing between 11 at negative at 0.62 here should be a lot tighter than say the spacing on 17, because 17 is a wider number slice than 1 is. The whole idea is to try to get every number looking as proportional as possible, so you don't have numbers that look like they're super spaced away, far away from each other, or where they're so tight into one another that you can't really see them because they're overlapping, or it just looks funky. So, and then you have these guys right here. These are the adjustments for the RSM of each number. So again, you could change these so maybe you want numbers that look like they're basically completely metallic. I did that with the Raiders, and in Madden 25, these actually can give you a pretty decent amount of control. Again, you'll have to do some trial and error in order to see, hey, how does it look? Do I need to make some adjustments? And you can do it so that, oh, hey, just the front number is really shiny or metallic, cool, or just the back, or just the sleeves, and so on and so forth. Okay, font comp. This is the exact same as number comp, but this is about the nameplate fonts. A lot of the same teams will use the same fonts over and over again. So if we bring this guy up here in the Data Explorer, you'll see that this font right here, so Standard Jersey 2012 Niners, this right here is also being used by the Giants, blue alternate and red, and it's being used by a couple of different jerseys. Now, you can also, similarly to changing a number font, you can change this as well, but it will affect every team that uses it. I have not done a ton in terms of modding the fonts on the back of the jerseys. I did a lot of that in Madden 25 and 24. It does feel like there's a slight limitation with the compositor, but we'll get into that more when we get into bundle editing and stuff like that. So for now, we'll just say, hey, that's where those files are going to be, and that's where they're at. And same thing, you can change the color and the tint, which is actually really nice, because it used to be that if you wanted to change the color of the nameplate, you would have to go and recreate every number slice. So there's usually like 38 slices, A through Z, some lowercase numbers and special characters, which is a lot of work and kind of a pain. So you can just change the names and change the colors of those things way easier now. And some, like the Panthers, which have a two-tone color, you can change those where they have multiple colors. We'll get into that again a little bit later. So that color's font comp, and then you have the same thing here with the font material settings here, where you have the nameplate RSM. So this again can make the names in the back of the jerseys really shiny or really flat. And they have in here like where these things are kind of getting placed with this texture mapping. For the most part, just leave this stuff alone. You can always experiment with it, but just leave that alone. Number overrides. We will get into this when we actually cover numbers eventually. But needless to say, this is where you can really make some changes to your number fonts in a way that will not affect other jerseys if you don't want it to. We will get into that in far more depth, because this is going to take a little bit more explaining, and I want to actually demonstrate how it works. So we'll leave that alone for now. I don't mess with Captain's Patch. Don't mess with that. Don't mess with the material preset map. That right there covers every part of the compositor, at least in brief for some, in depth for others. This is your starting off point. This is where, if you want to make just some very basic changes, you can, but this is also where the base of more complicated projects will take place. So the hope is with this is that you will see these, and it will be a little easier to like, oh, hey, I see how that fits together, and will hopefully make it a little bit more intuitive as you go forward and want to make some more changes. For now, that is where we're going to leave this tutorial. What the goal going forward will be to address specific changes that you might like to make to the jersey, such as, hey, we want to do a different type of stripe, we want to change different colors, we want to change the numbers. We will do that in separate tutorials, and we'll try to break those down and give them the time that they need to breathe, as well as kind of show some of the changes that you can make, where the limitations are, and as well as, hey, how you might be able to kind of get around some stuff. But for now, this is where we're going to leave it. Again, I am Running Wild. Thank you for joining me on this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have questions, feel free to leave comments. Feel free to hit us up on the Discord. That is where I'm going to be posting this, as well as it'll probably be on YouTube. So yeah, y'all have a good day.